And I mean, we've seen this, right? Nobody is exempt from challenge, from adversity, from obstacles. We all have it in our life. It's going to come sooner or later. That's what the 41 life is, though. Overcoming those challenges, overcoming those obstacles as they come at us and coming out stronger on the other side. So that's what we're here for. That's what we're about. We want to provide encouragement. We want to help people to keep going through those times, and we want to have some fun along the way. This is the 41 life. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another week of the 41 Life. I'm David.
And I'm Devin.
And this is episode 7.
Yeah, lucky number 7.
That's right. We are excited that you guys are here with us and excited to get to chat a little bit. So anything new to report before we get into it?
Nothing new over here. We're in Black Friday mode at the store.
Yeah.
Full Black Friday mode.
It's a very busy time.
Yes, it is. And it's hard to believe it's only a little over a month away.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting very close to the holiday season.
Yeah.
And that's probably a lot of people's favorite time of the year, but also it can be a stressful time in the year. So hope for everybody listening that it's a very exciting and good time and very little stress as we go through that time.
Yes.
So yeah, but I mean, in the meantime, we get a really good baseball playoff going on. College football, NFL's in full swing. Cool, crispy weather's coming in.
Yeah.
It's nice.
It is nice. We have a pumpkin candle going right now.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like pumpkin?
You'd be surprised.
I mean, what is life without a pumpkin? Especially this time of year.
I couldn't tell you. I'm not familiar with that life. So, pumpkin is life, I guess. Yeah. Well, we will get into it. Last week we stopped. We really didn't get super far in the storyline of everything. We had a big faith episode and talked about a lot of stuff pertaining to that. And so we left off at the biopsy, and we'll pick up this week on the results and kind of go from there. It was a very interesting start when we first got the results. And like we said last week at the end of the episode, we were very confused initially. We get the results on my chart sometimes before the doctors even get to review them or see them, which is a blessing and a curse. But in this particular situation, we got the results before we heard from the doctor. And we were sitting in the living room. It was me and you and both our moms.
I was sitting exactly where you're sitting.
Yeah.
I remember this very vividly.
Yeah, and I was sitting on the chase part of our couch, and we knew going into it that the 3 options were germ cell tumor, leukemia, or lymphoma.
Yeah, I definitely remember the germ cell and the lymphoma. But
and we told ourselves it'll definitely not be a germ cell tumor.
Because that's weird.
Yeah, who's ever heard of that? We were wrong. Turns out that, as we now know, it was a germ cell tumor, but the way it showed up on my chart was testicular cancer. That was really uncomfortable, sitting in a room with your wife and both of your moms, finding out apparently from a my chart result.
Well, it said testicular cancer, and I remember your mom was like, "Is everything okay down there?"
Yeah. Yeah, it made for some very uncomfortable
you were like, "Yeah, I don't think anything's going on."
Yeah. But once we got some clarification, it made a lot more sense. So basically, the reason that it showed up as testicular cancer was because when you're a little baby being formed up, as we all are inside our moms, everything starts in your chest and works outwards. So that includes limbs, organs, everything. So whenever you have a germ cell tumor, it's because one reproductive cell gets left behind. So because it's a reproductive cell, in guys, that shows up as testicular cancer, and that's why it showed up that way on my chart. And so once we found that out, I was
So
like,
the
oh,
cell that stayed behind in utero in your chest turned to
yeah,
cancer.
yes.
Yeah.
And like I said, or like Devin said, there were a lot of uncomfortable questions that came shortly after that. But
We were just like, what? Like
yeah,
this is the first time we're hearing of this. Like,
yeah. And typically, that's associated with surgeries and a whole bunch of follow up stuff. And none of that was the case with me. It was strictly in my chest, which was good news. But the bad news of that was it was a cantaloupe sized tumor that was pressing on pretty much everything, major organ that is in your body.
mm-hmm.
So because of that, typically when start having a conversation about chemo, I didn't really know much about this, but it's called a port. You get a port put in, and all that is just instead of having to have an IV put in constantly in your arms for the chemo to go in, it's pretty much a central line that stays in, and there's an easy access point for the nurses to be able to connect and do the infusions with. The problem with me was I was so compromised from all of the other stuff that I couldn't get that
I
port.
don't think they could access it. Or was it because you were clotting or what was going on?
Well, they couldn't get to the place where they needed to put it in
Because
there
of the
because
tumor.
typically I still have one. It's literally, if you're watching this, it's right here under my shirt. Um, but with everything that was going on, they were going to have to go on the other side, which is where your heart's at, and then that was going to create complications because of the location and this and that. So once we actually got into chemo, my arms got pretty worn out for
Yeah.
that first week. And that was not so fun. But fortunately, after that, I was able to get the port put in, and that
Mm-hmm.
made life a little bit smoother. But that's kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. um, Once we got the diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
um, I remember our next question was, okay, well, who's going to be our doctor that, we go through this with? Who's going to be my oncologist? We at that time knew who my surgeon was going to be. And we, had kind of met a lot of my care team, but that was our big question.
And I remember I was talking to one of my good friends, and she was like, you should see if you can get this oncologist. Like, we go to church with him, and, he's an amazing doctor and he's an amazing person. And I was just like, oh, like, David's already been assigned an oncologist because we had
Hmm.
gotten something in my chart. And she was like, okay, well, just, keep it in mind. And like, she told me his name, and then I pulled up your my chart and it was him.
Yep.
Like, what are the chances of
Yeah.
that we would be connected in that way?
Yeah. And we are very, very thankful that he's our doctor. I
Yes,
have
we are.
no doubt that there's a lot of other very qualified, very good doctors, but I feel like right from the get go, like, I don't know a better way to say it than we hit it off. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a weird thing to say when you're talking about a cancer diagnosis and the doctor that you have. That's, not typically a time where you're thinking about good relationships forming necessarily, but I mean, he's been very, very good.
Yeah,
Um,
he cares,
yeah,
which is the
cares a
biggest
lot.
thing.
Cares a lot. So we figure out who it's going to be, get all the appointment times and stuff set up. We have a meeting with him basically to go over a treatment plan. And like I said last episode, this stuff happens very fast,
Mm-hmm.
especially because I usually the kind of limiting factor is getting the port put in because you have to typically wait a little bit because it's a surgical procedure. So you have to let that heal before you can kind of go sticking a needle in there.
Mm-hmm.
But because I didn't have that, we pretty much got right into it. I mean, I got discharged from the hospital at the end of one week. We were having, pretty much the next day an
I
appointment.
remember the first appointment with your oncologist so vividly.
Mhm.
I remember like where we were sitting, and I remember the room, and I remember him coming in, and the first thing he said was over 90% chance cure rate. He's like, those are really good odds. We'll take
Yep.
those odds any day. And I
Which
remember,
in a cancer world,
yeah,
90% is a slam dunk.
yeah,
I mean, that's pretty much, I would imagine, pretty much as good as you're going to get.
yeah. And I remember we kind of like had our appointment and, all this stuff. He's like, I will say the only thing is that sometimes when you're dealing with a tumor this big,
Hmm.
there could be some things lurking beneath that we weren't able to get in the biopsy or that we can't see.
Hmm.
He's like, but we're not going to worry about that. I don't think that's the case.
Yep.
But I always remembered him saying that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you remember, I like would bring it up sometimes
Yeah.
because I just couldn't let it go when he said that.
Yeah. I do remember that.
And so it was like 90% cure rate, but
Hmm.
eh, there could be something else going on
Anytime
here.
there's a butt thrown in there,
Yeah,
it does kind of
especially when
give you
you're dealing
pause.
with cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I remember being like, oh my gosh, like we both just felt comfortable around
Hmm.
our doctor. I always say our doctor.
I mean, it is our
It's your
doctor.
doctor.
We're in it together, and
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
you've had doctors throughout this process that we haven't necessarily like related to or
mhm,
been able to communicate with. And so I feel like having him as our doctor like has made it so much easier for me, like as your wife,
yeah.
because I remember there were times where other doctors would be like, good luck. And I remember thinking like, well, your doctor is not going to give up on you. Like
Hmm.
we can call him right now.
Hmm.
And it was, I know not everyone gets that,
Yeah.
like when they go through this journey.
Yeah. I'd like to think that our experience is more of the norm. I hope that's the
Hmm.
case because like we said, a good doctor can make all the difference. At no point has there been any, you know, okay, well, what can we do?
Yeah,
Just
sorry.
throw your hands up. And so I know that's not everybody's experience.
I will say also too, like being in the baseball world, we have lots of connections throughout the country.
Hmm.
And, I think anytime you're in the medical realm, like there are certain hospitals and areas with like different prestiges and
Hmm.
different reputations and all of this stuff. And I remember when you first got your diagnosis, like people reaching out and be like, I know this doctor, he's
Yeah.
like the president of, la, la, la. And especially like when, things kind of started turning and shifting in a way we didn't expect. People kind of jumping into me like, I think you should go to this hospital. I think you should go to that hospital. And we were just like, no,
Hmm.
like we are staying with our doctor, and like we had peace about that the whole time. Like we didn't want to hear it.
Well, especially because one thing that I really appreciate that he's done through this is it's never felt like he's just saying my way or the highway.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of consultation with a lot of other doctors, and I feel like especially when when it comes to a serious disease or health issue like cancer, you know who cares who gets the credit? Let's just figure out how to make
And
this
that's
person
exactly
healthy.
how he is.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm kind of looking back around the time when the biopsy results came back. I remember the Rays, and this is just kind of a testament to how good the people are over there. They pretty much told me, I think while I was still in the hospital, like, hey, like we'll figure out the details later, but we want you to know, like, we're bringing you back next year. We know you're going to come out on top of this thing. We want to support you. We want to help you however we can. And we want to do the right thing. And like, we'll work out the details later, but just know from an insurance standpoint, from whatever's next, we're here with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really, really reassuring. And to know that you have people behind you like that, especially because it's scary in the beginning. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we went into it a lot last episode, but I mean, especially, you can feel very isolated or lonely. And like, I felt a lot of that initially in the hospital because when everything starts to settle down and it gets quiet, that's typically when your mind gets the loudest. And I mean, that was when questions came out for me like, what does this mean for my baseball career? What does this mean for not just a career, life in general? So many things pop in. And so for them to right out of the gate say, hey, like we're silencing some of that for you. What we can help with, we're going to help with was, I mean, such a major relief.
Mm-hmm.
And being in Baltimore as well, like Johns Hopkins up there, and that's one of the best institutes in the country in
Mm-hmm.
terms of medicine. Like they're awesome when it comes to pretty much everything. And I had a teammate that did his cancer treatment there, and the Rays were like, "Hey, we'll work with Baltimore. We'll get you in there if we need to. If you want to go to MD Anderson, we'll get you in there. If you want to go to the specialist in this field was in Indiana." and or is in Indiana, and they're like, if you want to, like, where, if you want to go up there, whatever it is, like, we'll help, we'll do what we need to
Mhm.
do. And to Devin's point, we are like, really, we're okay right here. Like,
Mhm.
we feel good about, where we're
And
at.
I'm not to say that that's supposed to be everyone's story.
Right.
And I think we say all that to say, like, if you don't feel like you have a doctor that's advocating for you and that you can communicate with, like, you should go and get the second opinion.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, like, if your doctor cares about you, and you'll know if they do or they don't,
Hmm.
I mean, that's the best care you're going to receive.
Yeah,
And I do think second opinions, like, are always,
absolutely.
I
I
mean,
mean,
great. But I think to your point, what you said earlier, like, we felt like we were getting second opinions through
mhm,
our oncologist because he had no problem like reaching out to other experts in
yeah,
this area and getting their opinion. So we
yeah.
didn't even have to do the second opinion. He did it for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was even through the treatment process, pretty much
Yeah.
every scan, there was a direct line of communication almost the entire time.
Mhm.
And so, like you said, we felt very good about just the situation in general.
Mhm. We were I didn't realize how like lucky and blessed we were in the beginning, but I now realize like
Yes,
we are
yeah,
very blessed with your doctor.
yeah, and
Not everyone gets to have this story
right,
with their doctor.
right, and I can say very confidently, if it wasn't for him, there's been some, and as we go through
Some
this, we'll
doctors that have
talk
given up
more.
on you.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some really dark moments and some moments where, like you said, doctors like kind of said, okay, like, I'm tapping out, like, I'm sorry, I can't really. There's not much we can do, and so to have somebody who's stood with us, because like, we're not stopping, we're not giving, until this thing's done. That's our only option.
Mhm.
So to have somebody that's kind of standing there with us, and I know the emotional toll that that takes as well, and it's it's just something we're very thankful for,
Yeah.
and something that I don't think we'll ever really be able to put into words fully. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, so we get this information, we get our doctor, and I mean, pretty much we have a weekend. We have a Saturday and Sunday to process. And I started out, the treatment was called BEP.
Mhm.
It was a 3 drug chemo protocol that was very standard. And actually, the guy that came up with this treatment protocol created, put all this together actually in 1993 when I was born. So it's just kind of weird how, like,
Yeah.
the year I was being born, he was creating the thing that was
Gonna save your life.
ultimately going to save my life. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's worked with some big name people. The Probably the biggest one, he was the doctor that worked very closely with Lance Armstrong
Mhm.
to get him where he's at today.
Mhm.
So BEP, which
Mhm.
is the first treatment plan that we did, it's bleomycin, etoposide, and cisplatin. Those are the 3 drugs, and it's a 3, maybe 4 cycle treatment.
Mhm. So each cycle was 3 weeks long.
Uh-huh.
So you'd get treatment Monday through Friday, and
For the
then
first week.
yeah, and then Monday, and then the next Monday,
Yep.
and that would be your 3 weeks. And then you did that again 2 more times.
Yep.
And I remember at the beginning being like, "Oh my gosh, 9 weeks of this."
Yeah.
Oh my, how are we gonna do that?
Yeah.
Now we're 3 years in. We've had a billion weeks of chemo at this point.
Yeah.
But
Well, and that was it's a pretty scary
it is
thing to
scary. Well,
go
you don't
into.
know how you're gonna respond or how bad it's gonna be. And I think also we've seen at this point we can survive a lot more than we think we can, and we're a lot stronger than,
Yeah.
you know, we think we are. So
Yeah. Well, anytime you go
it is
into.
so scary to get that first treatment. Like anyone I know that, has cancer, has a loved one going through cancer, like my heart just goes out to them when they're in that very beginning because it is
Mhm.
so scary.
I mean, it's the unknown, right? Like,
Hmm.
anytime, whether it's cancer, what's a new job, it's, you know, doing something you've never done, going to a place you've never gone
Hmm.
to.
And you can see all kinds of research or get on Google about what drugs do to your body, and but you don't know how it's going to respond to your body.
Yeah. Everybody's a little different when, it comes to response. And,
Hmm.
I mean, there's been people, that I've sat in the room while we're getting treatment that are going through the same thing that I was at the time, and seeing the different responses that they have to the same thing. It's interesting to see how people's bodies just work differently and
Mm-hmm.
respond differently. But
Yeah. Some
that
people are
was,
more prone to nausea. You were very blessed through this journey to not struggle too. I mean, you had nausea, but it
mhm,
never overtook you.
yeah, it.
And I don't know if that's willpower or if you just have a stomach of iron.
I'm not really sure.
I mean,
I
I don't think I would make it.
yeah,
I get car sick. I can't even be in the car. Like sometimes I just wake up nauseous for no reason. I'm a nauseous person.
yeah,
So like I
yeah.
don't know how you did it.
I couldn't tell you.
If
I
I was
mean,
one of the
honestly,
seven dwarfs, I'd be nausea. I'm not even kidding. Is that not true?
probably yeah. You do have a very difficult time with it. You had, I mean, we talked about this, but you had like secondhand nausea,
I just
even when it wasn't so bad for me.
thinking about you, I'd be like, oof,
Yeah. But again, that goes back. You are a major empath and
yeah,
feel everything so strongly. And I'll also say it's not, you're not just feeling what somebody else is feeling, you're feeling what you think you would feel in that
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
So even if I was handling things pretty well, there were times where you were just like, I don't know how you're doing this. I would be this. And then you would literally talk yourself into
I know.
feeling sick in that moment.
Well, and you were prescribed a bunch of nausea medicine, like what Zofran, and
Yeah, I
I
don't.
was just like, hmm, this might come in handy for me.
Yeah, yeah. It's it hasn't really been needed too much for you. I think maybe just like you said on car rides and
Yeah,
stuff every
yeah.
now and then. But yeah. Um, but I feel like, talking about that treatment, I it went pretty smoothly, I would
It
say.
did. I don't know if you remember the night before your first treatment.
Yeah,
You passed out.
that was probably the most eventful part of the
So
night.
let me just. I feel like I need to like play this out.
It was actually the morning
It was
of,
the
by the
morning
way.
of. Okay. So the way that our bathroom is set up is that like obviously, two sinks and a mirror, but behind and then behind that is the shower and we have a glass door. So like if you're looking in the mirror in front of the sink, you can see the shower behind you.
Mhm.
So I'm looking in the mirror. This is not a joke, y'all. I'm looking in the mirror, brushing my teeth, and I look behind me. I kid you not, I see David sliding down the glass.
I don't know if you remember me. Maybe I didn't even get the words out of my mouth.
I just saw you sliding down the glass.
I it's not funny, but it's kind of funny looking back at it now because I remember trying to say something doesn't feel right, and then I realized what was happening, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Devin, I'm going down."
I didn't hear any of that. I just saw you slowly face against the glass.
Yeah,
We can
and
laugh about it now, but I mean, it traumatized me.
yeah.
Like,
Well, and again, this was the same thing that we've talked about a couple times happening before, and once we were able to kind of place it,
yeah,
it
well,
made
yeah.
it made it a little bit scarier,
It
honestly,
was, yeah.
because it was basically the fluid buildup was creating like pressure on my heart, and so that was I passed out like because I was just not getting enough
Yeah.
oxygen in that moment, and
When we got to the cancer center, we told them like what had happened, and they're like, "Well, it's probably just anxiety." And we were in COVID time still, so like I wasn't allowed to go back with you to get your
mhm,
infusion, which
yeah,
was absolutely terrible.
yeah.
But because they thought you passed out from anxiety, they gave you your own room, and
Yeah,
I got to sit with
they were
you.
like, okay, it's day one. We'll make sure
They're
you're
like, you probably
okay.
are having some anxiety. That's probably what that passing out was. We were just like, oh, okay, like,
Yeah, well, I remember thinking like, I've been told that this is not what that
yeah,
was, like, but I
yeah.
also didn't want to, come across as that patient, just like, let me tell you, sir, like, it,
Well, and then we met with your oncologist, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's definitely what it was."
yeah, not anxiety.
The
It was the heart,
yeah,
the fluid buildup around my heart, just to clarify.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, really, other than that, like, I mean, I'm trying to think. The biggest thing is it was COVID time, so we had to be very, very cautious, and
yeah.
we
And
cooked at home because we didn't want to eat out because if I got COVID, that was, I
I
mean,
mean, you guys remember
pretty
what
much
it was
game over.
like in COVID.
Yeah.
Like we were scared to do anything. So imagine facing that, and you don't have an immune system.
Yep.
So we were scared to death, mostly me. And I have come a long way because I've had to give up like all of my control throughout
Yeah.
this journey, but I was still very much holding on to control in the beginning. And so I basically just wanted to like hide you away for 9 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't go out to eat. We didn't go to a drive-through because someone could have. I was like, someone could cough on your straw.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we didn't get food that couldn't be heated up in the microwave. So like like a blueberry or whatever fruit or produce like sitting out. If it wasn't something that we could heat up, like you wouldn't eat it because someone could coughed on it in the grocery store.
Well, and with fruit and vegetables, it was tough in general, just
Yeah.
because, I mean, if there's any type of recall or outbreak, that you find out after you've eaten something, well, for me, it was too late.
And
Like,
but we were just like over. I
yeah.
at I'll take responsibility. I was overkill, but you didn't get sick that whole time.
No, it was, and that's again why we're here. Like,
And I think that
there's not
was
much to say about that because it was, I mean,
yeah,
I, I, I mean, the weirdest thing about it was, and we don't understand. This is by nothing other than God just making my body work the way it did. But I didn't get sick. I actually was able to cook pretty much every night.
was
I ate
BDP
normally.
when your blood counts dropped, your white blood cell count dropped so low.
Mhm,
And I remember the physician's assistant on call at the time was like, "Hey, like, I don't feel good about moving forward with your infusion today.
mhm.
Your white blood cell count is like nothing."
And that was kind of towards the end too.
Yeah. So I mean, really, you really didn't have an immune system. So I am
Right.
glad that we were. It
No,
was better to
definitely.
be overprotective, overly cautious than the opposite.
Yeah.
Um, but then she came back out and she's like, "So talk to your oncologist, and yeah, you're going back there.
Yeah. Well, and he said from the get go, he said, listen,
We gotta go."
there's gonna be time. He said, I know your numbers are gonna at some point look bad. The white count's gonna drop, your red count's gonna drop. He said, but we're not stopping. Like,
We can't.
we just, for this to be effective the way that we want it to, the way I know it will be, we just got to go. He said, I'm not going to put you in harm's way. Like, obviously there's, things that I'll be paying close attention to, but he said, if numbers are low, just know, like, we're we're rolling, we're going.
And you
um
lost all of your hair pretty quickly,
I did.
like 2 weeks in or something. It
Yeah.
started falling out. Like,
I don't know if the hair on my head will be coming back, but guys, I'm just ready to have eyebrows again. I mean, it just, it really
you know
changes
what
the
they
look of
say,
a person.
the
I mean, look at this. Look at this.
eyebrows are the picture frame to the face.
Yeah.
You don't have a
Well,
picture
my
frame right now.
picture frame's broken at
You're
the
just a
moment.
picture.
Yeah.
You need your frame back.
Yeah. But hopefully they'll be back soon. You guys will get to see the progression on here, so
Yeah.
that'll be fun. Um, but yeah, we got through. I mean, no chemo is ever smooth or easy, but it was relatively uh, okay.
hmm
And
I don't know if you remember when like your hair was falling out really bad, and so we had to shave it,
mhm,
and I had like a blood pressure episode.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it wasn't shaving your head. I think it was what it represented.
yeah.
Like, it just
It all just kind of
it
hit.
hit me.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, like my husband has cancer. Like,
Hmm.
and I remember I was like, I am gonna have to go sit down.
Hmm.
I'll be right back.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, basically I'm the one that has suffered more than you is the moral of the story.
yeah. That's what it sounds like,
Just
isn't
kidding, just kidding.
it? um, but yeah, we get to the end of that treatment,
hmm
and I mean, we were so fortunate to have so many people come around us and help us during that time. I mean, we had people that were checking in all the time. We had people that were,
Sending us
offered to bring us
stuff,
food and did bring us food, not just offered, but did. Um,
and I think like being in the position to experience receiving all of that stuff, it's not even the stuff that you receive, it's the way it makes you feel when someone is giving to you.
mhm,
Because like you said, it's so scary and isolating to be, in the position that we were in. And people like you come home from treatment and there's a package at your door and someone sent you a coffee mug.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, I really can't even put into words. Like it feels just like a hug.
Yeah,
Like,
it really
and
does.
you feel like seen, and you don't feel like everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Well, let me know how it works out, and like leaves. Like you feel like there's a group like walking with you, and and we've had just some amazing friends and family
Yeah,
that even to this day continue to check in.
yeah. I mean, and
And that's not easy to do because life is busy and life's
yeah.
fast.
Well, and I have a lot of people that it's so funny because it's almost like an immediate follow up. It's,
Yeah.
how are you feeling? I know you're probably tired of being asked that. And for me, like, I never care to answer that question.
Yeah.
Because to me, like,
That's just you're saying I care.
yeah, exactly. And I recognize that, like, and like you said, life gets busy, people get going. And so for people to check in and, like, whether it's sitting down for a meal together, whether it's a text or a call, like, it just,
Hmm.
I mean, it showed me that I don't do a great job with that and I could do a lot better. And so
Hmm.
it's challenged me in a lot of ways. But also talking about, getting gifts and having food brought to us, like, Devin knows this. I am probably the most awkward person in the entire world when receiving gifts.
I feel like
And
you've gotten better.
I've gotten better, but I'm not good because I think it comes down to two things, probably one more than the other. The one, like, for some reason in my mind, I said this last week, like, I'm not always very nice to myself. And so when I get a gift, like, the first thing that pops into my head is like, you really think you deserve that? Like, you don't. And I've gotten a lot better in that
Hmm.
department. So that made me feel guilty for getting a gift to begin with. Not so much now, but the part that I think still is kind of true today is I don't feel like I can express my gratitude well
That's
enough.
my thing. Like it means so much to me. It makes me uncomfortable because it means so much to me.
Hmm.
And I'm like, how can I like make you feel how you're making me feel?
Yeah.
And I feel like I can't do that. So I'm like, oh, this is uncomfortable to just sit with like
Hmm.
how loved I feel right now.
Yeah.
Like,
But it also, one thing that I learned through this is if there was nobody that needed or was able to receive gifts, then we would never be able to give the way biblically that, Jesus talks about being generous.
mm-hmm,
And so I had to kind of shift my framework a little bit to see it as this is literally the hands and feet of Jesus
mm-hmm.
right in front of us. And if we weren't going through this, then that generosity
Well,
and
it's incredibly humbling.
it is. And we would, there wouldn't be that opportunity for that to come to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to get to that point because, like I said, I felt like, I had that sense of guilt and I didn't feel like I know how, or I did not feel like I knew how to accept that properly and show the right amount of gratitude. But I feel like, God through all that kind of showed me like, it's really not about you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Actually, I feel like to not accept gifts is almost pride.
absolutely. Because you're
Like,
saying I can do this myself. I don't need anybody's help.
yeah,
And no man is an island.
yeah.
Like we all, not just in times where things are difficult. I mean, especially in those times. But man, like what if I went out and won the lottery, which I don't know how I
Mm-hmm.
would do that because I've never bought a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
But if I go out and I win the lottery and I can't pick up the phone and call somebody and be excited with them, like that's a
Mm-hmm.
great thing. But that just shows in the good times, just as much as the bad times, people are important.
Yeah.
And I feel like, people are also difficult. So you can kind of choose what you want to focus on. I mean, and I feel like that kind of goes with a lot of different things. I mean, for example, I've seen this quote or, it's on shirts, it's on all sort like, but going to the gym is hard. Being overweight's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Being in a healthy marriage is hard. Going through a divorce is hard.
Yeah.
Like whatever, there's two sides to every coin. You have to choose your
It's
hard.
never not going to be hard.
Exactly.
Like, we live in a broken world.
Hmm.
We're separated from God. It's going to be hard.
It is.
No matter what. Which
Yeah.
hard do you want?
Yep.
Like, you've got to deny yourself in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
Always.
And I think that's where, to kind of round this back to where we were saying at the beginning, for us to, if we would have gone through this and been like, no, 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 like we're good, we don't need anything, don't do anything, like we had to humble ourselves, like you said, to accept these things from people. But it also has brought us a lot closer together with people, and
Mm-hmm.
we've created a really good community, not just, in Greenville, but in the baseball world through people that we knew from West Virginia, from Tennessee, from, you know, college, like all these different places. And to see so many people come together, not just around us, because like I said, it's not necessarily about us, but to see people come together and unite over one thing, it was really a good side of people that I think I needed to see more than I realized, because I would say in in our relationship, I am the skeptic when it comes to people. I think you do a much better job than I do at seeing the good in people. I'm like, I think everybody's out to get us. I think they're all coming for us. And so to see this, contradict that directly, I was like, huh, no, actually, I think that's wrong, and I need to
Yeah.
change that.
Yeah.
Like it was very like I keep saying this, but it was very humbling for me, and I feel like God worked a lot through that for me,
Mm-hmm.
and probably for you as well. But
Yeah. I mean, mine was different in that, like you said, it's pretty natural for me to see the good in people.
hmm
Um, I think for me, it was just I want to be the person that helps. I don't want to be the person that needs help. No one wants to be the person that needs help.
yeah,
And, just to kind of like skip a couple steps, I'm sure we'll get to this, but there was a GoFundMe for us.
hmm
And I really, really struggled with that.
we both did.
We both really struggled with it because we felt like we didn't deserve it.
Yeah,
And there was a lot of guilt that we had because of it, which is really sad because that was people trying to help and trying to be there for us.
and we did get to
We
that
did get to
place.
that place, but I really felt God convict me like what you're doing right now is not like noble and humble.
hmm
You're being prideful.
Yeah,
Like you're saying you're too good for help and you're not too good for help. You do need
yes,
help. And like you said, like I mean, people giving and being generous, like that's the hands and feet of Jesus.
hmm
And for us to stop that and be like, no, like we don't,
hmm
like I felt like God was like, don't do that.
yeah,
Like accept this.
yeah.
But yeah, it was really hard. It just, I mean, I never in my life would I thought I would, never in my life did I think I would experience a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
So that's not something I was fully prepared for or anything I had ever even thought about, like how I would feel about it.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely had to work through some guilt and like let my pride down.
hmm Yeah. No, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, I think we've both learned a lot and grown a lot from this in so many different ways, so many different facets.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
So so we get through the end of treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and at this point you have to wait. I think we waited 6 weeks for the scan.
Yeah. It's all honestly, it's a blur to
Yeah.
me. Hopefully, you can remember the timeline
Yeah.
because
Somehow I remember it pretty well.
yeah.
Um, so we get done with treatment, wait for the scan. And
Do you remember your last day of treatment? What month that was?
so I don't remember the exact date, but it was earlier mid December,
Yeah.
because I remember the timeline of it was we had to wait the 6 weeks, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
Spring training started in the beginning of February,
Yeah.
and I was at spring training.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was in communication with,
Yeah.
keeping them updated. We had like two plans. Basically, if I had to stay home, then we would kind of reassess everything. But if I was good, if the scan came back in a way that we liked and it was good, like I was getting down to spring training on this date, and we were going to do
Mm-hmm.
this and we were going to do that. And I don't know if y'all know this or not, but chemo's really hard on your body. And we knew that, but for some reason, we're just talking about pride.
I knew that.
Yeah, my my dumb brain decided that it was going to be a good idea to, just hit the ground running, and I was going to get back on the mound and be throwing 95. Like it was just going to take, maybe a couple months to get there. And
To perform at,
yeah,
the highest level in the
yeah.
world.
Um, and I know, like, I was definitely overly ambitious, but I just really wanted some normalcy. I
And you wanted
really,
to take back control of your life.
yeah, I just wanted this to be a speed bump
And it's
that we
so
went
funny
over.
because prior to this, like you were thinking about quitting baseball.
Yeah,
And then this happened and you're like, oh heck no, like
yeah,
I'm going
I got
back
to
to
double
baseball.
down now.
Yeah.
So the scan does come back in a good way.
Hmm.
Basically, the tumor had shrunk down majorly to where it went from the cantaloupe to basically the size of, I think it was a baseball or softball
I
at
have
that
no
point.
idea.
It
I
was,
do remember him saying, I'm going to be honest with you, this didn't shrink as much as I wanted it to.
yeah, well, he wanted it completely gone.
He said normally these things just like melt away.
Yeah,
But he got second opinions
yep.
and they all said like yeah, like he's good to
Hmm.
go, like it's going to continue shrinking and it'll go away, and like all signs are pointing towards you're done with this, you're
Yep,
cured.
yep. So because of that, like I said, I was hopped in the car, went down to spring training.
And we were like, peace out, cancer.
Yep, we thought
That
this
was
was done.
a journey and it's over now.
Yep. And Devin was, I mean,
Yeah.
taking care of business at Lizard Thicket. Like we were looking ahead, thinking everything was
Hmm.
smooth and
We're getting
everything
our
was
life
gonna be good.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like one thing that I've learned is like don't try to figure out what God is doing.
Hmm.
um because in my mind I was like, oh, like this is a setup. Like I think everything's about to become amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I could totally see it. I can
Yeah.
totally see what he's doing. Like, I
Uh-huh.
bet you're gonna have the best year in baseball, and all these things are gonna happen, yada yada yada, and you just shouldn't do that because you
Yeah.
don't know what he's gonna do.
No, and it's only gonna put you in a position like best case scenario, you're like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you're gonna be let down.
Well, and
And
I even to this day, like we've learned that so like strongly that we'll be like, wonder what God's up to.
yeah,
Wonder what he's about to do. We
yeah,
don't try to figure it out.
yeah.
I mean, at all.
Having expectations or predictions of what you think God's gonna do is pretty much setting yourself up for failure
I
because
just
he
have
doesn't.
expectations that he's doing something,
Yeah, absolutely. There's something
and
happening, but
that's
trying to
it.
figure that out, I feel like is it's impossible. I mean, he's outside of time, right? So
Yeah.
he knows where everything is leading and he's working everything together. So with that, by us trying to predict, and I'm bad, I love anticipating things that are to come.
Hmm.
I like there's just my brain goes in that direction. Like I like to understand people so that I can anticipate outcomes and I'm not in an uncomfortable position.
Hmm.
And it also helps me relate with them in a lot of ways too,
Yeah.
I think. But doing that with God is not going to work.
Well, and
And we have seen that so clearly.
the crazy thing too is that I would, sit there and predict what I thought was going to happen next, and be so mad at him when that
Hmm.
didn't happen. So mad when he's got to be sitting up there like, I mean, I never told you.
Yeah.
Like, you decided that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think at this point, because the statistics were so in our favor,
Yeah.
it made sense that, like I said, we were anticipating these things based off of kind of what
What
we had seen and what
based off
made
of
sense.
reality and what seemed to be happening.
Yeah. So our expectations going into this at this point is 2022. So thinking that the 2022 baseball season was going to be incredible, life was going to be turning
And we were
around.
like, oh, it makes sense why you weren't performing well. Like, now we
Exactly.
have the answer. Like, now that's fixed.
Yep.
Like, you're going to go back to how you were before.
Yep. All that to say, we were terribly wrong. And that's where we're going to stop this week. We love the cliffhangers for you guys, I guess, but things definitely uh, shaped up in a different way than we anticipated. And we'll get into that more next week. Discuss there was a lot of just a roller coaster of emotions that was going on being back in baseball and kind of how everything shaped up with that. And we'll go into that next week. But thank you guys for joining us this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it as always. And if so, make sure to share with a friend, rate, review, pass it along. If you guys like it, if you don't, then we'll try to be better for you guys, I guess. But once again, thank you guys so much for all the support. It really means the world to us. We are so appreciative and so grateful. And we're just excited to get to tell our story and what we've been through. And hopefully it's helpful for people. So, on that note, I'm David,
And I'm Devin.
and this has been the 41 Life. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next week.